Dzień dobry Państwu. Ja się nazywam Anna Turzańska-Sadlej i bardzo serdecznie chciałam Państwa dzisiaj przywitać na naszym webinarium dotyczącym systemu WorkBook firmy Deltek. Cieszę się, że Państwo tutaj licznie u nas się pojawili. Oczywiście nie na żywo, tylko wirtualnie, ale mam też nadzieję, że uda nam się w przyszłości zorganizować jeszcze taką prawdziwą, oldschoolową konferencję. A tymczasem nadajemy w takim hybrydowym modelu. Ja z biura firmy Todis z Warszawy, a moi goście z firmy Deltek z różnych innych lokalizacji na świecie. Mamy tutaj dzisiaj, gościmy dwóch panelistów, pana Almeidę, który będzie prowadził prezentację systemu na żywo, i pana René Praestholm, który jest takim guru od zarządzania agencjami, współtwórcą systemu Deltek. Okay, guys, maybe I will hand it to you just for a short introduction and hello.
Great, I'll go first, René. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Almeida. I'm a Senior Principal Solutions Engineer at Deltek, working with the WorkBook program. So I've been doing this for about 7 years now, I think. So being involved in the pre-sale component, but before then I was a consultant working with agencies implementing software. So I have both the pre and post-sale sort of experience, and hopefully today we'll demonstrate the program itself and how it can, resolve some of those key challenges that you probably see day to day. So looking forward to take you through that over the next hour.
And my name is René. I'm based out of Copenhagen, where WorkBook is originally from as well. We started the WorkBook company about 20 years ago. I was one of the originating fathers of WorkBook, or founding fathers. And I've been working with agencies for, well, probably more than 25 years, big and small agencies. And I'm here to also monitor the chat. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to put them into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer the questions. Apart from that, there will be a Q&A in the end. Over to you, Anna.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so just a few words about the agenda. After a short introduction, we'll have a live demo. That's the most important part of the today's presentation, and at the end Q&A. Może ja jeszcze przejdę na polski na początek. Jeżeli chodzi o ten Q&A, to bardzo byśmy prosili o zadawanie pytań po angielsku. Jeżeli to dla kogoś problem, to oczywiście będziemy je tłumaczyć ze względu na naszych anglojęzycznych tutaj gości. Parę słów dla Państwa, którzy nas nie znają. Ja reprezentuję firmę Todis. My tutaj od kilkunastu lat na polskim rynku i też również za granicą wspomagamy firmy we wdrażaniu systemów do zarządzania. Bardzo dużo też działamy na rynku agencji reklamowych. I z firmą Deltek współpracujemy od kilkunastu lat. Deltek jest dla nas bardzo ważnym partnerem. Jest to taka bardzo znana międzynarodowa firma, lider w zakresie właśnie sektora usług profesjonalnych. To jest dla nas też ważne, że polecamy systemy, które są rozwijane, których wdrożenie nie powoduje, że za chwilę system na przykład znika z rynku. I też to, co jest bardzo ważne, wdrażając system Deltek, to nie jest tylko samo rozwiązanie, to jest bardzo duża ilość know-how właśnie dotyczącego rynku agencji reklamowych, które w to rozwiązanie jest zaszyte. Skąd w ogóle taki pomysł na dzisiejsze webinarium? Proszę Państwa, generalnie zaobserwowaliśmy, że dookoła pojawia się ogromna potrzeba narzędzi, które pomogą firmom ogarnąć procesy firmowe w tych dzisiejszych trudnych czasach. Narzędzi, które będą elastyczne i szybkie do wdrożenia, bo pandemia nam niewątpliwie bardzo dużo tutaj namieszała, wprowadziła pracę zdalną chyba już na stałe i w takiej sytuacji kluczowa wydaje się sprawna wymiana informacji pomiędzy uczestnikami projektów, a takie są realizowane w agencjach reklamowych. Bardzo ważne się powstaje taki dostęp do informacji na bieżąco, do informacji, które są po prostu tu i teraz, bo ludzie pracują z różnych miejsc, bo pracują w różnych też godzinach. I taka właśnie, taki dostęp do informacji, wymiana informacji w zespole wydaje się kluczowa. I tu chodzi zarówno o takie tematy bardziej twarde, finansowe, jak kontrola budżetu i realizacji projektu, fakturowania, ale również informacje miękkie dotyczące po prostu realizacji projektu, czy też wymiany informacji, plików, wiadomości. I dlatego właśnie Deltek bardzo dobrze adresuje te potrzeby jako takie elastyczne, proste, jedno rozwiązanie stworzone konkretnie dla tego sektora i chmurowe, co też jest w dzisiejszych czasach bardzo istotne, bo w związku z tym szybkie do wdrożenia. Jak my przychodzimy do firm, to nie wiem, jak to jest u Państwa, ale najczęściej zastajemy taki krajobraz, że mamy dużo różnego rodzaju Exceli, jakichś własnych systemów chmurowych, osobny system finansowy. I to rodzi ogromne problemy, bo te systemy są połączone, ale czasami częściowo i szczególnie właśnie w tych takich pandemicznych warunkach, jak nie mamy informacji na bieżąco, jak trzeba przeklepywać dane z jednego miejsca w drugie, jak potrzebna jest druga osoba, żeby raport dostać, że nie możemy sami, jak chcemy, nie wiem, pracując wieczorem na przykład, sięgnąć do odpowiednich informacji, tylko potrzebujemy kontaktu z kolegą, który z jednego Excela do drugiego coś przepisze. I dlatego właśnie jest taka ogromna potrzeba zastąpienia takich rozwiązań jednym rozwiązaniem. I tutaj Deltek to świetnie adresuje właśnie za pomocą systemu WorkBook, bo funkcjonalność jest bardzo szeroka i obejmuje zarówno CRM, jak i zarządzanie projektami i zasobami, czyli ludźmi, jak też elementy finansowe, elementy raportowania. No i właśnie te miękkie takie elementy, czyli udostępnianie plików, wiadomości, współpraca w grupie. I to Państwo już za chwilkę zobaczycie. Ja nie będę teraz omawiać wszystkich tych cech systemu WorkBook. Jak zobaczycie, tych funkcjonalności jest całkiem sporo. Pan Louis będzie dzisiaj pokazywał Państwu oczywiście tylko wybrane z nich, na wszystko nie zdążymy, ale oczywiście jesteśmy do Państwa dyspozycji. Jak ktoś będzie zainteresowany, no to bardzo chętnie się spotkamy, już dalej będziemy zgłębiać system. Chciałam tylko zwrócić uwagę na to, że właśnie te wszystkie elementy są tutaj zaadresowane, czyli od procesu sprzedaży poprzez budżetowanie projektu i zarządzanie nim, ale razem właśnie z rejestracją faktur kosztowych, z wystawianiem faktur sprzedaży, ale również taki bardzo istotny ostatnio obszar jak zarządzanie zasobami, czyli przydzielanie odpowiednich zasobów do projektu, grafiki konsultantów, czy też Państwa pracowników. Ludzie to są w tej chwili najważniejsze zasoby i bardzo o nich trudno, w związku z tym to też jakby optymalizacja w tym zakresie jest szczególnie ważna. Także cały cykl życia projektu, tak, od jego początku aż pod koniec i rozliczanie jest tutaj zaadresowane. Ja mam nadzieję, że Państwo zainteresujecie się po dzisiejszym webinarium, będziecie bardziej zgłębiać i zostaniecie potem z nami na dłużej, bo mam takie wrażenie, że wdrożenie takiego systemu w tej chwili jest po prostu koniecznością, aby ogarnąć taki chaos, który czasami albo często panuje właśnie w dzisiejszym świecie takich ogromnych zmian. I po prostu nie mamy wyjścia. Żeby się rozwijać, firmy muszą wdrażać tego typu rozwiązanie, ale też oczywiście chcą mieć z tego benefity konkretne, finansowe, a poprzez kilkadziesiąt lat tutaj już działalności Deltek pokazuje, że wdrażając swoje systemy pozwala firmom właśnie realnie zwiększyć przychody, poprawić właśnie wydajność i generalnie lepiej funkcjonować, lepiej się rozwijać. To ja tyle tytułem takiego krótkiego wstępu. Przekazuję pałeczkę panu Louis, który będzie już tutaj prezentował.
Thank you, Anna. Hi again, everyone. So hi there. So yeah, let's jump in. So we've heard some great things about WorkBook. Let's take a look at the platform. Before I share my screen, just a little bit about the background in terms of WorkBook. So just so you know, WorkBook is a full SaaS solution. So it basically means it's hosted and managed by Deltek, which includes the release of periodic updates over the year. You assess the system from a web browser, as I'm going to show you. I'm today using Chrome, and access rights are set per role to define what they can do and what your users can see within the system. So with all of that said, let's jump in, and what we'll do is we'll start off today looking at the CRM, so the opportunity management. So René and Anna, can you just let me know if you can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, so the area that we're in at the moment, as I said, is CRM. So this is all about managing your opportunity. So over the course of the time that we have together today, we will of course look at projects and resourcing and the execution process, but we'll start today at looking at managing your opportunities in CRM. So really this is where the agency can register any potential work for a prospect or an existing client and attribute a value and a percentage probability to better understand and visualize forecasted work and potential revenue coming into the business. So that's the dashboard that we're starting off with today, looking at all of the opportunities that have been registered. Now, what I will say is, you know, if you've used CRM systems before, this is pretty much what WorkBook does out of the box. So if you think about, you know, registering an op, putting a value against it, putting a percentage probability, you can see that is kind of standard process. So I won't go into that in too much detail today. What I do want to focus on is where I think we differentiate. And to Anna's points that she mentioned in the slide about efficiency savings and about having everything under one roof, so to speak, all your data in one place and how that can make your processes more streamlined. So with that in mind, let me just show you very briefly an example. I mean, you know, if we wanted to create a new opportunity, it's as simple as pressing this button and filling in the details, but we'll just take an existing one for now. And as you can see, the idea is that you will have the information available to you. So if we just take, for example, this digital strategy one here, I can click on this, open it up, and as I suggested, you can then start to update the information, linking things to a sales stage, so you can automate that process in terms of the percentage probability linked to that particular sales stage, and those can be defined by you as a business. And as things start to progress or change, you can increase or decrease as needed. And what that will do is it will affect the overall net revenue. So 120,000 is the overall value. If we change that to 80%, you can see the factored or weighted value will change to 96,000, as you can see. Now, on top of that, as well as other CRM systems, you can do things like add in activities. So if you have follow-up calls or if you need to have a meeting with this client, of course you can add that in, and what that will start to do is it will populate your activities list. So you can use this to say, oh, okay, I've been reminded that I have a phone call today, or I have a meeting, or I need to do a proposal. So as I said, it's kind of standard CRM from that side of things. Where I feel that we differentiate, and I think the USPs that you achieve, is two factors really. The first is being able to collate all of this into one place. So if I switch to the 12-month forecast, what this is allowing us to do is look at our opportunities in one place. So those are these two layers here. So just the difference between these two is anything below 50% probability we class as a lead, and anything above is marked as an opportunity. So you can see the kind of expectations per month and by category of what that is for the business. On top of that though, because WorkBook is all about connected data points, we have projects in the same system as CRM. We have people in the system as well as other things. We can connect data points together. So what that means is we can actually pull in the live project data into here as well. Those projects that are both 100% confirmed, where the client has agreed to essentially pay us, and maybe those pitch works that we're doing where we have to invest the agency's time, but we're not 100% sure that it will go ahead. So we can actually classify it in that way as well. So it's nice that we can bring that all together into this graphical interface. And of course, if you want to drill in and filter, we can to specific clients or specific agencies if we have multiple agencies out of one system. And we can also drill in and look at all of the data sets that are making up these numbers by switching into these tabs. So I think that's one of the key differentiators that we offer here on top of the standard CRM, is that ability to collate everything. And secondly, I would say that when you are in that position to transition an opportunity into a project, so where you need to invest your people's time, maybe start to plan them out, put together a brief or a budget, rather than having to have that in separate systems and potentially rekey that in again and human error and things like that, what we can simply do is take the opportunity like so. So if I just open this up again, and we have an area here where we can transition or convert the opportunity directly into a project in a single click. And that takes all the information that we've registered thus far over into the project space, which is where we'll go next to focus in on the project management process and allow us to flesh and build that out. Okay, so as I said, it's the standard things that you would see with I think some additional benefits that will aid the expediency of you working within the system. Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel free to jot them down. My colleague René will answer those if he can right now, or we will hold them to the end. But what I'd like to do now is jump out of the CRM space and move into the project management area. Okay, so this is where the majority of your program or project managers will be spending their time focusing in on how projects are handled and how they're tracking. So this is really all about holding the project information. Now, we went from a CRM, an opportunity, into a project. We created an opportunity and converted it. It should be said that you can create projects directly without doing that if the need was there, okay? And as I mentioned before, because WorkBook has data connection links throughout, we can start to pull all of the data into one dashboard. Okay, and we'll go through these numbers in a little bit as we go through. But one of the things I wanted to highlight, again, around some of the points that Anna mentioned, was just about making your life more easier, simpler. And what I mean by that is things like just automating the linking of rate cards to clients. So let's say, for example, if I was to want to create a brand new project directly from here, or even if it comes from CRM, as long as it's attributed to the right client, you'll see that the system will automatically do things like this. So if I was to create a new project from Lego or bring it from an opportunity, it will link the Lego rate card directly to that client. So it just means that there's no issues or errors, and we're ensuring that we're protecting our margins by using the correct rate card. So that just becomes automated. And of course, you can update rate cards periodically. That would be sort of a system administrator that would be able to do that. But I just wanted to highlight that in terms of, an efficiency or a protection, again, for your margin around creating budgets. Now, in terms of keeping everything in one place and the data connected, I mean, what you can hopefully see from the screen is, as the project is progressing, we can start to capture things like the actuals. So these are your timesheets and purchase orders that are coming onto the job. And as you start to plan the job out and assign resources, we can start to see what the expectation is in terms of estimate to and then estimate at complete. But we will come back to these in more detail a bit later on. But I wanted to highlight that that's what we're seeing right now, is essentially a live dashboard that will update as changes happen on the project. Now, for the purpose of today and the time that we have, I'm going to use an existing job that I've created that's got data in there already, and it's this Heineken project for this website project for Heineken. And what you basically see on the left-hand side are the subcomponents that you can build out across the project. Today we'll be focusing on the budget, the schedule, and the analysis section. But just so you know, you have the ability to add a briefing document so that it's centralized. Your teams can communicate with one another and upload documents to just keep each other up to speed with what's happening with the project, changes in delivery or whatever it may be, so you can communicate directly. You can raise third-party costs directly within the system. You can potentially invoice and connect that to, so you could raise the invoice and then connect it to a third-party or external finance system. And you can also upload documentation. So what this does is it syncs to your existing file server. So it's not a duplication. We literally just create a sync between your file server or cloud service provider that you choose. So again, just keeping everything in one place. And the fact that that's synced means as you remove files or if you add new files, that's just maintained automatically without you having to, again, do manual intervention. But as I mentioned, for the purpose of today, I'm going to focus on budget, schedule, and analysis. And if we go into the budget section, what we can basically do is we can create something that looks like this for the client. So directly out of WorkBook, we can create a PDF document where we can decide how much information we want to show. Here I'm presenting quite a bit of information to the client, but this is what we're going to end up with. And the way that we do that is by building out a budget. So here's an example that I have, and I'll show you how we can do this really quickly in a second. But just to give you the context, we have phases to break down the budget. Then within the phases, we have lines, which are, again, a link to the rate card, which defines that a lead developer is charged out at 160 in my system, multiplied by 80 hours gives us just under 13,000. The same is true with third-party costs like here. So those can all be registered in the budget. And as we're putting this together, we can start to track the margin across each of those activities line by line. But obviously at the bottom, you can also see that we have an overall value and overall margin. Okay, so in terms of putting this together, again, around efficiency savings, what we recommend is doing things like using what you know already. So it could be that you create templates for the type of work you deliver, or it could be that there's a historical job that you've done in the past that is quite similar. So it's about efficiency savings to get you to that position. But whichever one you choose, WorkBook will just make that process really straightforward. So I can click on here really quickly. Maybe this time let's do an event. I can choose what elements I want to bring in the template and update the rate card to the new client. Click on OK, and that will pull all of the line items in from the template, which I can then, of course, update. So if I need to, for whatever reason, remove certain elements, I can. If I need to add, I can, just by adding in a new line and filling in the details and making adjustments as I need to. Okay, so it's really quick and easy to get there. Now, just to finish off here, in terms of outputting, as I suggested, you can decide what you want to show to the client in terms of the level of detail. And then obviously you can output that to give you the PDF that I showed you before. But I think a really key element, and I think, again, where WorkBook sort of separates itself, is being able to then build in approval hierarchy. So for things like budgets, timesheets, POs, invoices, a number of different areas, you can build in approval hierarchies where you set the information to say that, you know, if it's below X, it's self-approved. If it's above X, it must go to a line manager approval. If that's the case, but the margin has dropped below 40%, it must then go to Anna, a named person, for final approval. And I'll show you where that is a little bit later on. But that hierarchy, again, just ensures that people are, you know, staying within the confines of what the agency needs in terms of its margins and the profitability levels that you're looking to make. One final thing here, you can also create multiple versions of budget. So as clients come back and say, you know, it's a little bit too expensive, you can close off previous versions, create a new one to then make changes. So this is really good for you know, tracking those changes and understanding how to better budget into the future. So that's another key feature that I think is useful within the WorkBook platform. Okay, so let's move on from budgeting, and I want to focus now on the schedule. So you've got your budget, it's gone through approval, you've sent it out to the client, they may have come back and you had to make some versions, but eventually they sign off and that gets approved. We then need to talk about how we're going to deliver it. So we've got agreement in terms of the money, but how are we now going to deliver this in terms of the hours? So that's what the schedule is all about. And again, I've got an example here that shows a sort of completed one. Now, my example is quite detailed. You don't need to have it at this level. You might only have 2 tasks or 3 tasks, which is absolutely fine. But I wanted to show you this more detailed one so you could see the kind of full capability. So we can have things like dependencies linked to activities, and we can have milestones as checkpoints within the timing plan. But the idea is you would build this out, set the delivery dates, and then you can potentially make assignments of resources. Okay, and I'll walk you through how we do that in a second, but that's kind of what you can achieve. If we just create one very quickly together, the cool thing here that I think again is a more of a USP for Workbook is how we get you to this point. So of course you could start from scratch, but as we've already discussed, you've kind of done a lot of the heavy lifting already. You've got a budget with all of the activities and the type of roles that are needed. So wouldn't it make sense to use that as the foundation? And that's absolutely what we can do here. So just like with budgets, with schedules, we can use shortcuts, let's say, to help us get to the finished article. So in this case, I'm going to copy the budget, the numbers from the budget into the timing plan. But as you can see, there are other options as well, should you want to use that. But let's go ahead and use this option of copying the budget to schedule. And as I mentioned, you could have multiple budgets. So we take the one that has been approved, and then we can decide what we want to bring in. But you can see it's got the amount of hours that were agreed, the sort of roles that were defined. And Workbook can even help us by looking at people's availability and things and making suggestions to even speed up that process even more. But for the purpose of today, I'll leave that blank just so you can see kind of how it's done. And I'll click on OK. And the system will do exactly what we ask of it. It will pull all of those line items with the hours into the budget, into the timing plan from the budget for us to begin working with. Okay, so I won't spend too long here, but just to let you know, we can push entire phases out like so. We can make dependencies really easily by clicking and dragging and linking them together, which then allows us to, again, drag and drop. So the idea would be that potentially your project managers would be doing this. So they would set when things need to happen and when the delivery dates are. And then your process at the moment might be that then goes to a resource or traffic manager or team lead, which is absolutely fine. So your PMs could set when things happen, and then the delivery team finalize who's going to do that, and that Workbook can absolutely cater to that. But what I'd like to say is, because Workbook has extra data that maybe you don't have at the moment, we could actually streamline that process a bit. So I'm going to show you a slightly different process in terms of that. As I mentioned, as Workbook has connected data points, we can take advantage of this and move maybe more to a request and approval type way of working. So let's say that I wanted to, as a project manager, potentially see who might be available to do some of the creative or the design work. So let's take this, for example, here, infrastructure design. Because Workbook knows what people are doing already, okay, Workbook knows when people are already booked to other projects. It knows if you bring in vacation and absence management into Workbook when people are on holiday. You can even sync your Outlook calendar to this as well. So like today, we're in a meeting for an hour. It would be able to remove that availability from your capacity. So what we can do, we can twin that with Workbook's understanding of people's skill sets to do some really clever stuff. So I might say, show me a designer, for example, and let me see if they're free to work at the moment. So I can look for skill sets, and Workbook will filter that down to those individuals. And then I could say, how long are they available for? So by clicking on Don's name, I can see within this time frame of 16 days, he is free for 128 hours. It's removed all of those things that I mentioned before, and this is his true capacity in that time. The requirement is 80 hours of effort on this. So I could decide to give him everything, or I could split between 2 or 3 people as I need to. So it's just, Workbook gives you some tools to maybe change the way you work to bring more autonomy to people, more responsibility and spread the load, but also just give them visibility into kind of what the situation is. And as I said, this could be that they request, which is then routing again to a named person for approval. Okay, so just a slightly different way that may improve that collaboration aspect. But as I said, if you just wanted people to set the delivery dates and have someone else do the whole assignment, that's absolutely fine as well. Okay. In terms of the scheduling, I think we'll kind of leave it there. So just to recap the process, we were able to generate a timing plan with all the relevant information really quickly by using some of those features. We could potentially then make requests for resources to then go into the resourcing view, which I'll go into in a second, which is more the global resourcing. So looking at kind of more across the pool of resources, who's overbooked, who's underbooked, where's their capacity, looking into the future, do we have enough bandwidth to take on new work? That's what we'll jump into now. But I just wanted to finish off finally on this section. Is it's great when you've got everything initially together, but as we know with projects, they can change, they can slip, or there can be delays. And if you were having to make those changes manually, that's very time consuming. So I just wanted to highlight one other feature here, which is this ability to make adjustments really quickly. So we might say that everything up until development had gone well, but subsequently there's been a slip. And what we actually want to do is move that by X amount of days or to a new start date. So we can use the automation of WorkBook to speed up that process for us. And not only does it help you get to a starting point, but once the project is in flight, you can use some of these inbuilt tools to make the process a bit more efficient. Okay, let's jump out of the PM view. We will come back a little bit later on to look at reporting, but we're now going to focus, as I said, on the resourcing. So this could be a traffic resource manager, it could be a team lead, it's anyone that needs bigger visibility into the overall resourcing picture across the agency. Now, what I should add, of course, is that WorkBook is a multi-system, multi-company platform. So that does mean if you do have multiple agencies under your umbrella, maybe different locations, different cities, that will really help. You can pull that into one place and be able to then, run projects in that way, but also resourcing. So you could look at other locations to see if they've got resourcing availability, and that will help us paint a picture in terms of answering these questions around availability. I'll come back to this screen in a second, but let's focus first of all on the weekly schedule. Now, the weekly schedule, along with other views here, is all about showing you the resource booking information. The idea is that it can be used to gain insight into future workload requirements. So the agency can be proactive and prepare rather than being reactive to new work coming in. And different views are available for specific planning needs. So this view here, for example, the weekly schedule, can be adjusted to show week by week, which is what I've got here. Each column represents one working week, but I could change that to be daily. So one column is every day, or one column is every month, depending on how far into the future you want to look. You can, of course, focus in on specific teams or departments or locations, as I mentioned. But the key thing here is that it's giving you a visual heat map into where you have challenges. Okay, so we can see red means that we've got overbookings against individuals. Orange means people have requested holiday time, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea here is you kind of want to try and create, I call it a sea of green. So green is good. That means they're within their capacity, on confirmed work, and everything is ticking along okay. So that's the first thing this will do, is help you identify challenges really quickly. But you can also use it to fix issues. So for example, if we take a look here, we can see in the project management team, I can drill in and see that Penny is working on you know, several projects in this week that's making up those hours. Her colleague, however, here has some bandwidth. So, you know, can I shift some of that from Penny to Dennis? Yes, I can. Let me click on this icon here, and I can take it from Penny and I can move it straight over to Dennis to very easily just take those hours and transition them from one person to the other. Okay, so that's one way that this system will work. So this is good to sort of I'd say mid to long-term visibility and planning. But you may have challenges that are more day-to-day. Okay, so what we can do is we can switch to the timeline calendar. And this will look at things more, as I said, day to day. And this is useful for last minute changes, or, you know, someone phones in, says they're not well. It's the same data, just displayed in a different way. So what we could easily do is say, okay, no worries, thanks for letting me know, hope you get better. But I can just take that work and then look at which of their colleagues is free to be able to drag that and drop that to different individuals. So you can see we could look at that daily and weekly and potentially monthly as well. But I quite like this on a more day-to-day view. The final view I want to show you in terms of managing bookings is the task matrix. And the task matrix, we focused on the previous view, which were more resource focused. This one is more project focused. So it allows us to quickly jump in and look by project what's happening for each client. So we can come in and focus and see who's working on what when, and then be able to just simply adjust the hours by clicking into these cells and overwriting. If I just come into the future months here, I can go in here. We're a little bit behind, so it won't let me change it, but I could just click on here, maybe put that to 6 and put that to 6 as well by over typing. So this is more project focused, whereas the other two are more resource focused. But hopefully what you can see is, because it's all feeding into this scheduling view, regardless of which view you prefer to use or is most suitable for your requirement, you can make those adjustments really easily and have everything pulled together, rather than maybe having Excel sheets that, you know, aren't all connected to your project. So you're having to manually do that yourself. Now, just finally on this, I'd like to talk about this. I'd say that this is more about a business owners or you know, a senior C-level individual. This is about making business decisions. So for example, we can pull all of the capacity data here to show us that within this period of time, these 3 weeks are the challenge areas. So what can we do to mitigate that? Can we push the delivery dates out so that they fall into these less busy times? Are there other people in other departments that we can draft in to support for this 3-week period? If not, then having gone through that list, maybe the most suitable solution is to get a freelancer in. So although that's going to hit our margin on the project, it's a justifiable cost because we try to do other things to resolve it. Or it might be that if this is an ongoing trend, then you decide to do a recruitment drive and you hire new employees because there's enough work for that team based on the information that you can see to make that hire. Okay, so you can see hopefully how it rolls up different levels to give you that understanding that may be difficult to see right now. Okay, so I'm going to jump out from the resourcing view in a second, but just to, again, clarify what we saw there, the data all feeds into this view. We can use different views depending on the scenario to help us balance or readjust or add new work. But whatever we end up doing, work will sit in assigned to an individual. I call them an end user, a designer, a developer, etc. So what we'll do now is we'll jump into their view so they can see what they've been assigned and obviously log timesheets and things like that. So let me log out as this individual and we'll log in, as I suggested, as an end user. So the views that we've been in so far today, you can see that there was, you know, information that we needed. There was different views and different subcategories, etc., which were useful for what we needed to do. For an end user, though, we want to keep it really simple. So as you'll see, the content that we have here has been tiered down substantially. We've basically just got, a handful of views for them to look at. So in terms of timesheets, accurate timesheet submission is fundamental to any agency, right? But unfortunately, users, they find this process typically quite time consuming and the execution quite cumbersome. And therefore that leads to late or inaccurate timesheets. So with WorkBook, we tried to overcome this in several ways. The first thing we tried to do was be able to make it so that you could directly timesheet against what you've been assigned. So essentially here are all the tasks that have been assigned to me, okay? And just going back to what we talked about before, having things like conversations and having things like the brief is really useful, because as an end user, I can just come in and validate and just double check things. But ultimately what I can do is once I've worked on the task, I can simply click on the task itself. And here you can show, it also shows me how many hours I've got versus what I've used. But I can click on that and all of the data that you typically require in a timesheet, the client code, the job code, activity, etc., the date, all of that is pre-filled for you. All you need to do as an end user is say how many hours you spent, and that will register the time, as we'll see in a second when we go back as the PM. So timesheets don't really get much easier than that. Having said that, there is also a mobile app which does the same thing. So your team don't even have to come into the platform. They can do all of the same functionality directly from a mobile app to really make that process straightforward. Now, that's really simple when you've been assigned to tasks, but we also have the scenario where individuals maybe aren't assigned all the time, maybe account managers, account directors, and they jump into different projects. That's not a problem. We have the more traditional timesheet view, I would say, which is basically a list of things that they work on. So what they would do here.
Just to interrupt you, sorry. There's a timer function as well that will allow you to start your time. It will count the minutes, the hours. When you press the button, it will then submit that time in between into your timesheet.
Correct. Yeah, thanks for that, René. So there's that option as well. But as I said, for those individuals that need to jump in as well and maybe just need to say I did an hour meeting, they can use this more traditional timesheet where they can just plug in what they did and away they go. Okay, so all kind of parties are catered for, but hopefully, as you see here, that linking of the data already being there, the client codes, the job codes, etc., just makes that whole process a lot easier and more efficient and more accurate. Okay, let's jump out from here. Then I'm just conscious I've got about another 5 minutes or so before I need to hand back over. So let me jump out and we'll look at the kind of culmination of all of this, which is reporting. So hopefully you've seen there in a kind of whistle stop tour the process of kind of, even from opportunity stage, how we could plug that in, how we can then convert that into a project, flesh the project out, assign resources to the delivery of that, have it appear in their to-do list for them to log time. So what we do is we come full circle back into the PM view to now just better understand these numbers. So if we look at the dashboard here, I've replicated these numbers at the bottom here. We understand now how we get the budget that goes through a link to a rate card. It can be approved internally and externally, but that's what the client has agreed. Then as we do timesheets and potentially register third-party costs, we get our actuals, which is 72,000, 25% of this overall budget. So these two represent current position, right? It's facts at the moment as we know it. As we move forward, though, we can start to make forecasts and predictions. So as we created the timing plan, we made assignments of resource. Obviously, they have a charge out rate per hour on that rate card. So adding all those together, we can see the value of work still to do. So it's 41,000 of work still to do. If we add the two together, we can see our estimate at completion, the prediction of where we will be come the end of the project with everything WorkBook knows currently. And if we compare that to the overall budget at the start, you can see that this is turning out to be quite a healthy margin on this. There's no risk at the moment of over-servicing. So what your teams can start to do really then is focus more where they see the red marks. These indicate that this is potential risk of lost revenue, over servicing. And they can obviously then drill into the project and see maybe why that is. Have we got timesheets that shouldn't be there? Has there been scope creep? You know, it allows you to ask all those questions that maybe you're finding difficult at the moment to be able to answer. Now, the next level that we can go to is drill down a level further. So we can actually, as I mentioned earlier, go into analysis, which allows us to go into that project and be able to just understand and compare at an activity level where we were at the budget, where we are when we planned, and where we are as we're delivering. So you can see here, for example, within the budget, we had 52,000 signed off for lead developer, but we planned out 54 when we made assignments. So we're over allocating against the budget. That's a decision that you may have made to win the business that you under budgeted. So, you know, but it's highlighting that to you to bring it to your sort of in front of you to make that decision. Here is a more challenging issue. Here we have complete over servicing on junior developer. We had no budget. There was no planning of it into someone's diary. Someone's just registered time against this project. Now, using things like workbook timesheet approvals would potentially make this, you know, something that wouldn't happen. But I just wanted to show you as an example of what you could see. Now, on top of that, I mentioned you could have purchase orders, you could have invoices, you can do revenue recognition and decide how much revenue you can take. All of that is possible as well. And what that just gives you here is a single view of the truth by project. You can drill into each of the subcomponents, the hours, purchases, invoices, adjustments as you need to as well. So that's a really nice level that you can go to. So hopefully what you can see is that a lot of the data that you potentially need day to day is available in system, but we appreciate that there's probably a requirement to sort of send PDFs to other internal stakeholders. So that's absolutely fine. We have a comprehensive reporting suite that allows you to do that. So I'll just show you a couple of examples of those. We have like a job profitability report. So this can be scheduled and automated. So what I mean by that is every Monday, this will be emailed out to Anna, Louis, and René. And this will show us the tracking of profitability, taking into account what the budget was, what we've done to date in terms of actuals, and any invoicing or revenue recognition or write-offs that we've had to do on the project. And you can see that's broken down in this case by client and delivery with a grand total at the bottom. Another example of a report out of our reporting suite is around utilization and recoverability. So if we take a look here on this line here, we'll focus in on this guy. We can obviously see, you know, everyone has a billable target. In this case, it's 70%. And we can see how they were tracking for that month period. So we get a breakdown of the hours, how much of that was holiday, how much of that was non-billable, billable. And in this case, we can see that with Alex here, he's actually exceeded his target, which is great. So his productivity has been brilliant. He's 3% over his target, which if he took on his own is one thing. But as I suggested, because we have these connected data points, we can link that to what does that mean in terms of the revenue that should equate to. So that 70% should equate to billings worth of about 15,000. But what we were able to achieve was only 10,000. We only recovered 10,000. So that might mean that he was busy, but he was working on maybe reduced discounted projects. And is that the right use of his time? So this is a sort of data that you can achieve from these type of standard reports that we have. And just finally on reporting, we also have dashboards. So you'll see there's 10 out of the box across the key sort of agency KPIs, utilization, profitability, pipeline, resource overview, etc., that you can interrogate and run. And obviously these would be more for senior members of the team. But one of them that I wanted to highlight is the revenue forecast. And that's what I'm going to finish on today. This is a static view of that. So I'm actually going to go into the live version and just talk about this, because I think this is a really key part of WorkBook's value proposition. What we can basically do is take the information that WorkBook has and give you the forecast into revenue in the coming months. So you're probably spending, you know, a large amount of time currently creating and updating this manually, probably in an Excel document. As I suggested, WorkBook can generate this for you automatically. So the idea is, and I apologize, mine is slightly out of date, but we'll go ahead with this. You can lock off and show the actualized revenue for certain periods as they go through. So this is actual revenue from January through to March, and that's locked off. And that's coming from things like timesheets, etc. But what we can do is we move forward into the future, we can pull data in from WorkBook, and that depends on what you're using. So I showed you opportunities and projects today. So you can see I'm including both of those, CRM and project information. So what that's doing is it's producing a forecast for us moving forward, and you can define how that forecast is calculated, whether it's based on billing plans, how you've assigned the work, an even distribution of revenue across the life cycle of the project. You can decide, but the idea is it's showing you that revenue that should be coming in. And if I just make this a bit bigger and was to click on this particular month, if you look at the bottom, it will refocus to show me those projects and opportunities that are making up that revenue in that month. And the idea is, as we get closer to that period, and we're a bit more, it's a bit more, let's say, accurate, and you have a bit more visibility and understanding, as I've done here already, we could make a change to that and say, actually, rather than it being 33 in this month, I'm going to be a bit more cautious and say it's 23, and the remaining 10,000 should be sort of positioned in November. Okay, so the key thing here is it's taking that legwork out for you, with you just having to make those adjustments. Okay, so I think that's a very key and a nice way to end, is that whole culmination of what we've looked at today coming into here to give you you know, a clearer picture. I should add, you can create these forecasts as needed, so you might want to do these weekly or monthly. You can create multiple ones as you need to, and that's good for comparison. And you can, as I just showed you, update the numbers in the forecast as it gets closer for accuracy. So on that note, we've kind of gone through quite a lot there. I hope it was, you know, it sort of all went in. I think the key thing just for me to finish on is the way that, as we said at the beginning, this is created specifically for agencies by agency people. So hopefully you've seen the kind of workflow, the thinking, the content and the capability is very much focused on how agencies work. And of course, you can adjust that. We give you a kind of best practice, but you can adjust how you do things. The core components are there to help you. So I will pause there. I think we have the remaining time for Q&A. René has maybe been answering as we go along, but I'll just open up the floor to the panelists to see where we are.
Yeah, sure. So let me just dive. There's been some questions on the file structure. So please share your screen again, Louis, and navigate to a job on the Documents tab, and we'll just elaborate on that. So the question was, can WorkBook create a folder structure, either your own file server or on a cloud-based file server? And the answer to that is yes. When you create a new project, and if you just click on the folder structure to the left, Louis, the system can automatically create a templated folder structure, as I said, either on your own file server or on a cloud-based file server. So with that, I hope the question is answered. Feel free to ask any other questions, and feel free to do it in Polish, and Anna can translate. If you're uncomfortable with English, that's totally fine. Or put it into to the chat view as well, if you would like to do so.
Tak, bardzo Państwa zachęcamy do zadawania pytań. Ja też, jeżeli by ktoś chciał, to mogę zezwolić na zadanie takiego ustnego pytania, ale też możemy oczywiście zadawać poprzez czat. Warto byłoby jeszcze wykorzystać te kilka minut, które nam zostało na ewentualne dodatkowe właśnie Państwa uwagi.
There's a question how users can communicate through the system. Potentially you want to going to the chat. Yeah. So yeah, just take it from there, Louis, if you want.
Yeah, so the idea with this is we have an inbuilt collaboration chat piece, and this is an example here. This is at a task level. So maybe people that are interested or are working on this task or just need updates, you can, as you can see, I've already got about 5 people on this. I can add new people simply by using @ and typing in their initials, and it will pull them through like Penny. But this is how you can do that. And essentially what happens, and this is a good segue, is once you've added the content, you can add in documentation, etc. Each user has an inbox. So the idea with the inbox is that it will, if a new message comes that you're attributed to, it will come into here. Now you can link this workbook inbox to your own Outlook or Gmail, whatever it may be, just to notify you have a new message. So you can see any new message will come in here, and I could just respond as I need to. So we're using the tags of like job and task to link it all together. But the inbox is where it will come in. Just to add to that, though, because I think it's important, I didn't quite show this as we went through. On top of those, things like approval. So if you're an approver, this is where those things will come in terms of approval. So timesheets was an example we mentioned. You could just come here and approve or reject those as we go through. But also for every day-to-day user, you'll get prompts directed automatically from the system. So you can set trigger points to let you know when you hit 50% of the budget or 50% of the time that's planned. So this inbox becomes really useful. But to the original question, it's all done through the collaborational chat, linking your colleagues, adding documentation, and using this tag mechanism to keep it all interlinked so you can find things as you go through. Hope that answered the question.
There was a question on whether you could start video meetings from the collaboration piece, and that is not an option, unfortunately. Then there was a question whether it's a possibility to create whole company budget as a P&L, and WorkBook has a finance and accounting module included, where you can create all of your accounts, and you can also do budgeting on these accounts. However, the finance and accounting module is not compliant to Polish regulations. So you won't be able to use the finance and accounting system as a full-blown finance and accounting system in Poland. Good. Any other questions? All right, Anna, if you want to finish it.
Yes, sure. I think that we've finished the Q&A session, and we are heading to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Louis and René, for the presentation and Q&A. And I hope that you enjoy it, and you can contact us. And then anytime we'll be making the follow-up of this session soon. And here are my contact details. And I hope that by implementing the workbook, your teams will be even more and more integrated, and there will be a better work and life balance for your people. As well. That's the goal, I guess, that to have the system helping you with the daily routines and saving time for the business and for the life.
And of course, to become even more profitable.
Yes, sure. That's the most important at the end for each. Okay, thank you very much, and let me know if you have any more questions. I think that we have one more questions coming.
Can we use inbox to communicate with clients as well? Yes, we have a client portal module as well, in fact, where clients can log in, and you can have chat messages and all of that, but they can actually also be allowed to see timing plans. You can share files and documents with your clients. So quite nice client portal module is also available. Yes.
Yes, I think that there is a lot of more functionalities. So I guess that we can set up separate sessions for that as well, if there will be such a need. Yes, there will be a recording. Yeah.
Good. Can we skip Outlook and switch completely to Inbox? I would not recommend that. There's also meeting calendar functionality in Outlook, even though you can synchronize and stuff like that. I would not recommend to skip Outlook entirely. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we are on time, just 2 minutes late. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.